1967 marked a turning point for the Beatles, the year they released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, an album that didn't just define a generation, but completely changed the landscape of popular music. The group had already begun to challenge expectations with Revolver, but Sgt. Pepper's went even further, breaking every rule that once confined rock music. With its colorful mix of sounds, bold lyrics, and instruments rarely heard in the genre, the album felt revolutionary. Yet, among its psychedelic experiments, there was one song that stood out for its quiet humanity, a tender reflection of a post-war generation desperate to be free. That song was She's Leaving Home. By the time they began recording the album, the Beatles were at their creative peak, fearless, imaginative, and endlessly inspired. One day, Paul McCartney came across a small newspaper story about a 17-year-old girl who had run away from home. The article described her parents' despair and confusion, and something about it struck him deeply. McCartney began to imagine what the girl's farewell note might have said, and from that thought, a song began to take shape. She's Leaving Home became one of the Beatles' most emotional and narrative-driven pieces. McCartney sang from the perspective of the runaway daughter, full of longing and quiet rebellion. She's leaving home after living alone for so many years. John Lennon, on the other hand, gave voice to the grieving parents, singing lines like, "We gave her most of our lives, sacrificed most of our lives." The song closes with a haunting truth: fun is the one thing that money can't buy. It was a powerful reflection on love, freedom, and the generation gap that was tearing families apart. McCartney later explained that the idea came from that real-life story. "John and I wrote it together. It was my inspiration. We'd seen a newspaper story about a young girl who'd left home and hadn't been found. There were lots like that at the time," he recalled. Lennon added that his lyrics from the parents' perspective were inspired by phrases his Aunt Mimi often used, words filled with love but tinged with control. In the late 1960s, stories of young people running away were becoming more common. Many felt trapped by the strict expectations of their parents and the rigid values of post-war Britain. The lyric, "Something inside that was always denied for so many years," perfectly captured that struggle, the need to escape, to find a life of one's own. What McCartney didn't realize was how close his song was to reality. The girl from that article, Melanie Coe, had actually met him years earlier. In 1963, she had appeared on the TV show Ready, Steady, Go, where the Beatles were making one of their first appearances. McCartney served as a guest judge for a dance contest, and the winner was a 13-year-old Melanie Coe. He handed her a Beatles record as a prize, shaking her hand without knowing that she would one day inspire one of his most heartfelt songs. When She's Leaving Home was finally released, neither McCartney nor Melanie initially recognized their strange connection. But the coincidences were uncanny. Like the song described, she had left a note for her parents and run away with her boyfriend, a man who had once worked in the motor trade. Years later, she explained that she ran away because she was pregnant, saying, "They gave me everything, coats, cars, but not love." In many ways, the Beatles could understand her story better than anyone. They had lived their own version of rebellion, four working-class boys from Liverpool who had broken free from the rules of their upbringing to chase freedom through music. They weren't much older than Melanie when they changed the world. And that's what makes She's Leaving Home so powerful. Beneath its sadness lies the same yearning for freedom that once drove the Beatles to leave their own homes behind and never look back.